All right, I think we're gonna be there in a minute. Man, hey, Lana gave herself some nice light and everything. Okay, everybody. Good night. Good night, ladies and gentlemen. One and all, welcome to Fatherhood Talks, another edition of fathers bringing their minds and their mouths together to be a voice for the fathers and sometimes maybe even the fatherless. Tonight we have, I guess, a pretty special show. It's um, uh, talking a little bit about, don't, as you probably looked at the pin, and I say this happens a lot of times, everyone looks at the pin needle and says, oh, what's the show about tonight? Oh, the picture tells me everything. But the title of tonight's show is the disconnect between dads and disabled children. And I think that this is a, we have, this is something we really should talk about. This is something that really needs to be talked about because I think there's a lot that goes on with this topic. And we can also change it into another way. We talk about disability and children and parents. I think I heard one of the dads write me earlier and say, this is a hard topic, not just for the dad, but for both the moms and the dad, because it's something that's difficult. So that's what we're going to be doing tonight. But I will tell you again, hey, we're here. Likes, share, subscribe, hit the bell, tell a friend, join us on Wednesday night, all those things. All of those things here, Father Talks. I'm Ron Osborne Williams, kind of like I won't say the host, because I don't want to be the host, like the facilitator. I facilitate us what we got to do, because we got some other people that's more host than me. As I would like to say. I'm just get things together. And as a matter of fact, let's see who some of these fine gentlemen are tonight. Let them go around and introduce themselves as we get ready to delve into this conversation for tonight.
Yep, Gene Rob Menard, father of 2 young adults.
Donald Jones, divorced and father of 2 teenagers.
Larry. Go ahead, Larry.
Larry Jordan, father of 2, 1 grandson.
Lionel Lightborn, father to a tribe of 7, 1 granddaughter.
My name is Ed Tenney, father of 6, 3 biologicals, 3 steps, and a granddaughter.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rohan Willock. I'm a father of 2 teenagers. Great to be here.
Jay and Fred. Okay, go ahead.
I'm Justin. I'm a father of 5. I have 4 girls and 1 boy. And I don't know what else.
That's it. Just good night to you, my brother. And Fred, Frederick, are you there? You good? Or maybe we're not hearing you. Fred is in that funny part of Broward County. They don't have, strange, because if you go right across the river where Fred at, that's the high-tech Boca area. They got yachts and jacuzzis in every backyard. So I don't know how the Wi-Fi funny over there, but hey, you know how it go. They might have blockers up so you don't steal their Wi-Fi. And that might be the reason why y'all Wi-Fi so bad over there in Pompano area and Deerfield. Because they got blockers, so y'all don't steal any Wi-Fi. All right. With that being said, let's get into, also I'm the resident, I try to be a comedian working on my comedy. It's probably not that humorous, but at least it makes everything a little bit less tense, hopefully. Let's go into this. When first things come to your mind, fathers, when you think about, and I don't know if any fathers here have a disabled child, or grandchildren or what have you, but definitely thinking about what the first thing comes to your mind when you think about the idea of fathers who have this disconnect with their child, being that they're disabled in some fashion. I'm going to let you guys go because I have tons of stuff about this to speak about, being that was my formal career, not formal, but career that I was highly involved with, and have some personal connection to the disabled community.
Well, I'll kick it off. Just in terms of a little bit of history, probably 30, 35 years ago, people with disabilities were handled in a much different framework than they are today. Back during those times, if a lot of you guys can remember, they had whole communities of disabled people where they would house them. And so fathers did not have a public type of relationship that they had to have with a disabled child. They would basically go to the facility whenever they wanted to visit that child, in most cases, and then they would leave, and basically the relationship would end almost up to at that point. Bringing it up to today, where after a lot of people advocated to have people with disabilities to have the same facilities, to share the same facilities that every other person does. That changed the game in a lot of ways. And now you had to bring your child to school, or that your child was transported to school, but you had to intermingle with all the other general ed population. So fathers had to really decide whether they were going to have a relationship with their kids, with their disabled kids, and many of them do not. A lot of them, and I found, because I was in that field as well, I taught students with autism for 18 years, and it was either a love-hate relationship almost, or a love, and I wouldn't say hate, it was a love embarrassment type of relationship. That is, either the father was very, very protective of their kid and really loved their kid, or they just didn't want pretty much anything to do with them at all. So that's the way that I was seeing it.
Hmm. Hey, thank you, Larry. That's a really good historical backdrop to let us really start thinking about, because sometimes we one thing I know that we sometimes forget history. We look at right now the present, and when we do that, we forget that there's some reasons historically why some things didn't happen. Why you didn't see in certain movies, when you look in historical movies, you didn't see any Black people, because they didn't let Black people in movies historically. By history point, wasn't just by accident. It was done that way. So just you may not have seen certain things, and so now we give us a great backdrop on how we understand disabled children and the family historically.
Yeah, Ron, just add on to what Lawrence is saying. I was watching a program regarding mental illness, and Ron mentioned the word handicap, and I will say this to everyone. I believe mental illness is a form of handicap. I believe that society looks at someone who may walk funny or talk funny, but if you think about it, Many of our children are being abused or live in an abused home. And unfortunately, in society, we have some of the biggest hospitals in the world, which is prisons. So there are many fathers who have gone through many scenarios, and they're in prison, and their children are out here trying to survive. It is a big problem, and it seems like let's just put the person in prison, and they'll stay there until do some time, and hopefully they'll come out better persons. You mentioned earlier that some fathers walk away, some fathers get involved, and that's another problem. You know, we are trained at schools to do so many things, but we are not trained to deal with domestic violence. We're not trained to deal with communication, financing. There's a lot of things that need to be changed. Lawrence brought up something, and I'm almost sure some of the school curriculum are probably based off what back in Lawrence days, where it's the same thing. But times have changed. Social media has changed. People have learned behaviors that they've carried on, and that has poisoned many of our fathers. And the system sometimes, you know, I'll be honest, you can only turn it into money for a certain period, but prison should not be getting bigger. They should be getting smaller. So I wanted to put a note in here. Mental illness is a form of handicap. It is social media, what people are seeing today are feeding a lot of people, both children and adults, things that are not developing or nurturing to this generation. But I'm not going to go on to that. I just want to put that in there. So fathers, if you're out there, take some time with the kids. It's just, there's no word I can say for us to do that.
Go ahead, Lon.
Oh no, I was sitting here thinking historically about disability or disabilities in this country, and if not the world, which if you were born disabled, it's what you call the ultimate stigma, right? And so even in this country, you have some of the most the world's successful people in this country that may have had a disability, but when you reach a certain plateau of success, the disability becomes separate from the success. I think we had a president that was I think it was one of the Roosevelts. That's what that was in a wheelchair. You had Albert Einstein was labeled disabled or sped when he was in school, and so it amazes me how we're very selective in what we call disabled and what's not. I mean, and then we would actually dismiss the disability once a person reached a certain plateau of success. You had numerous entertainers throughout history that was bipolar or ESE or illiterate and stuff like that, be it boxers. I mean, just across the entertainment spectrum. But once a success, they reached that plateau of success, then the disability was dismissed, even though they had it. And so I think that we, when it comes to disability, we're more opportunistic. What they call, historically, we opportunistic, which means people like, oh, you can't have that, even though you had it. But since you reach this plateau of success, then the status outweighs the disability, even though the person had a disability. And so historically, I think we're very biased when it comes to disabilities. As particularly as a man, I think it's the ultimate form of vulnerability, because I think about being vulnerable, but I couldn't think of no other vulnerability than having a child that's born with a disability to heighten my chances of whether I was going to be there or not. Even if I was thinking about flighting or leaving, even if the kid was born normal. And so I think that trying to compound that disability, right, with my responsibility is where the vulnerability come in for the father, because again, with the father, there's no trauma of bringing that kid into the world. You understand? And our involvement in bringing a kid into the world, it's more pleasurable than it is traumatic or vulnerable. And so because the mother suffered to bring that kid in the world, it makes more sense scientifically for her to suffer with that kid to keep him in the world.
Hmm.
You know, I think when you start talking about the disabilities and pointing to what Lightborn was saying, what it is that they're starting to understand now there's a spectrum when it comes to the disabilities. Before, everyone was just lumped into, if let's say you had Down syndrome, you had autism, you had ADHD, you had all these things, they would put you in the same category and just say, all of you have a problem, and we're going to put you all together without putting in perspective how severe the problem is. And so when you have those successful people, like you were saying, like Albert Einstein, who had ADHD, who they, said had ADHD. And let's not forget, there's a lot of things that, especially when it comes to, attention deficit disorder, that are misdiagnosed. Sometimes a kid that they say is ADHD is bored. It's that they're not being challenged enough. And so in some cases, and I'm not saying in all cases, in some cases, those type of things can be, like I said, misdiagnosed. In other things like autism and things like that, I mean, it's pretty spot on because of the testing that they do for it. And but what it is that now they understand that there's a spectrum. You're high functioning or low functioning with any disability that you have. And so they can now gear the learning and the activities in order to combat the severity of what you have. And with that comes, like everyone's saying, a learning curve. Because as a parent, the first thing you hear when you have a child with disabilities, sometimes you have denial. My child has no problems, whatever, because you don't know how to deal with it. When you actually start to actually confront it, it's fear, because now you don't know what to do with the issues that the child has. And so sometimes that's where the flight comes in. You have, moms and dads alike that are walking out because of the stress and high level it takes to handle a child who has a disability. And so when you're thinking about that, is a lot of things that you have to take into consideration when you're bringing that child into the household. Because first thing is, in many situations, both parents can't work anymore. So now you have to decide how you're going to function off of one salary. And if both of you are in it, that's something that you have to need, because sometimes these children need the constant care and that 24/7 interaction. So there's a lot that goes into it when you're talking about it, and the history of it, like Larry started off talking about, is important to understand, because again, you had them using kids, back in the day, experimenting to try to figure out what the problem is, rather, and so fast forward to today where you have inclusion, which Larry was also talking about too, the inclusion factor, where all kids are mainstreamed into classrooms, and you have your kids with learning disabilities or even physical disabilities within the same classroom as what they call, quote unquote, the normal children, or the average functioning child. It's supposed to uplift or better. It works on two folds. One, social sensitivity to the fact that I now know kids with disabilities, so I won't make fun of them anymore. And then the other hand, it's for the child with the disabilities, it's for them to be able to feel and gain a better self-esteem and excel at the same level as the other kids within the classroom, because they get afforded that opportunity. So it's not so like everything else in life. It's not cut and dry. This is like a very hard topic, because there's so many different areas within your life it impacts. It impacts you personally, as someone who feels, am I doing a good job? Can I do a good job? Can I continue to do a good job as a parent? Am I doing enough as a parent? Am I really trying to understand the disability my child has in order for me to help them become better? Because any setback of the child usually, and talking to parents, with because I was a child, am a child development specialist. So talking to parents, you see that they take it personal when the child regresses, because it's an impact on them that they did something wrong because the child reverted back somehow. And it's all about, the reassurance to the parents that you're doing what you can do. The first thing you're doing is creating the awareness that the child has an issue. The second thing you're doing is getting help for the child. The third thing you're doing, which is important, is being active within the environment for the child, because a parent who's not doing their part when it comes to a child with a disability, whether it be mental or physical, it slows the progression that the child can ever get because of that lack of continuous care, not only from the professionals, but going into the home and you working with the child in the home. And so, it's a stressor. It can be stressful for both parents. And I know a lot of times the mom takes the brunt of it because she's the one who's there, but it also plays a big role for the father, because again, a lot of times when we think of the father, we're not thinking of him as staying at home. We're thinking of, how are you going to make enough money in order for you to keep this household functioning? And a lot of times that added pressure, along with coming home and then dealing with the frustrations of not understanding the issues within the household because you're not there on that end, can cause a lot of issues for the father.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you said that, and I totally agree. And you know who I was actually thinking about more than anyone else was R. Kelly. You have a gentleman that could write hundreds of songs for people, wrote hundreds of hit songs and could not read. He had a disability, and who knows what his childhood was like, how much people laughed at him, because how children can be, especially when you can't read, and they make fun of you. And now, just like Lionel said earlier, for him to transform that disability into a successful career is just amazing. So it just tells me, for example, that it's what they call it, a disability, which I'm assuming that it's something, an ability that you lack just by saying disability. It's actually that your abilities are just concentrated in a particular area. In R. Kelly's situation, he had the ability to write songs. But how can you write songs and read music, but you can't read letters? But it could be that he was dyslexic, and could not read. Now, yeah, go ahead.
Larry, when I call that old fashioned. It's not a disability, it's a different ability. That's one thing we used to really advocate with the kids in the disability area. We kind of we're talking a little bit, but I want us to get really back into fathers when we talk about this, because one of the main things that happens with fathers, and we don't think about it, but many times both parents, but I'm gonna say fathers are many times, are very embarrassed by their disabled child. And you would say that that shouldn't be. How could that be? That's their child, this and that. But look at what we just said, what you said about R. Kelly. People still today say that about him as a grown man, even knowing this, the talent that he has to be, we're not talking about all the other stuff. We're just talking about using, I don't know, I want people to start getting hands on. We up bigging up R. Kelly, making them, we're using him as an example of a person who had an ability, who also had a disability. And that we can even see that even as adults, we still, look, Floyd Mayweather. Let's use somebody. Floyd Mayweather has an ability. He has a lot of money. He has a lot of popularity. But people say he can't read out of a Jack and Jill book. And people tease him, and 50 Cent made a whole big thing to tease him about this. And so we think about if that's happening to grown people, what do you think happens to children who are just developing, understanding their self-confidence, understanding their self-esteem, understanding those things that they are being told that they are less than and other people are making fun of them. And then imagine that child seeing parents who are also uncomfortable with that. That's the part that becomes very problematic, that a child can see, because a lot of, working with very severe disabled people in my work experience, those kids are very intuitive. They might have a disability, but they understand what's going on. Their brains are not dysfunctional. Their body may be dysfunction. At some point, they may, they may be slower. Their processing may be off, or whatever disability, because we have multiple. But they understand what it means to be a human, and they have human feelings like everybody else. And they can identify if people being genuine with them, if people don't like them, people don't care about them, even when they're non-communicating. Because that's a big thing. People that they can't communicate, we don't know what's going on. Yes, you can. You got to spend time to observe them. You got to not be scared of them. And you'll see that they will communicate with you immediately. I have some actual personal young man I'm personally related to, and he's nonverbal, but I know when he is, when I was talking to his mom about something that happened to him, and I told her it's clear he's not having a problem. It's the people who is with him that he's learning this bad. This is called learned behavior. He's learning to respond to. So because I got into an interaction with him and he did something to me, and I said, "Oh my God, what are you doing to me? You never did this to me before." And I realized that I did something, knowing my skills as a behavioralist with disabilities, I did something with him, and his response was completely different than what they said was going on at the school. And what I realized is because people are doing things to him, but he has no way to voice it. So he just redo what they do to him. Now, here's the sad part is his mom is doing that by herself.
Yeah.
I'm stepping in, when I very rarely, but I step in to come and see and support her, and he knows me, and he knows, this is one thing, he does not know me, he knows me. But look, we got to do. I can't. If you think your typical child needs you, your atypical child needs you 10 times more.
Amen.
10 times more. And so we just have to think about that. And they go through a lot more, but I understand many of us are not secure enough to be with our kids in that. We're not secure, our kids are normal, but now we're talking about our kids normal. We're almost, super insecure. If somebody laugh, we think they're laughing about my kid, and we looking around.
Yeah. And I wanted to say, first of all, good evening, gentlemen. Sorry for being here a little late, but when I saw the topic, I thought immediately about just us as men and our insecurity, because the world tells us when a boy child comes into this world, the reaction from a man versus a daughter, and it's not that I don't think it's ever intentional on any of our parts, but the reaction from a man when he has a boy child in the world is so different than when he has a girl child. And again, it's never intentional, but the way, and I see it on TV all the time. I was watching this one show. It was based in medieval times, and the man had been waiting for an heir to the throne, and the wife was pregnant, and she finally had the baby, and she had the first child. They didn't know it was twins, but one child came out. It was a girl. She said, "You have a daughter, sir." He said, "Oh, okay. Well, is she good?" "Yes." "Okay." And then the lady started having contractions again, and another child came out, and the midwife or whatever said, "It's a boy, sir. It's a boy, sire." And he lifted the child up like your roots and started praising, and everybody is screaming. And I'm like, well, hold up. This is the same. She just had another child. You ain't react like that from a girl. And that's one example. But then now, as a man, just imagine that boy child has a deficiency. And now is what you thought was going to be your legacy, your way of leaving a mark on this world, who is going to represent you, has a deficiency. And immediately, if you don't understand as a man how much more that means God has placed on you, you will then move into that mindset that this isn't what I signed up for. And the moment we go into that mind, that headspace of this wasn't what I signed up for, now our child ends up being abandoned, and we have the absent father situation, not because we didn't want it. Remember what I said, not because in the beginning, because we were excited, we were there, we went to every Lamaze class, we rubbed the stomach, rubbed the feet, we were excited of being a father. But because the child is not, as we would consider it, normal, we immediately lost, because now we're thinking about what the world is going to think of us. Not about the child, but what is the world going to think of us? What kind of deficiency does it say about me? What issue? Oh, I got to go get tested. Maybe something's wrong with me. And now we're questioning that. So that then lends us to not want to be around the child, because that means people are going to question me. Like Ron just said, somebody laughing and I'm insecure. I think they're laughing about my child when they had nothing to do with my child. I just think that we, especially in our community, we don't deal with that and have not dealt with that very well. And as a result, because of that, most of the men that have been around have walked away. So then how do you teach another young man who's never seen that in his community how to do it? Because all he's seen, like I said, we repeat what we see more than what people tell us. So if you haven't seen a man present for his disabled child, pushing them in a wheelchair, picking them up, being there at school for them, if you don't see that, how do you as a man who may have that situation, have a child of your loins born that way, how do you then deal with it? That's my question, Ron, in reference to this aspect of how do we change it? Because it's not that these men didn't want to be. I think when the child came into fruition and they understood the work, the level of, they already knew it was going to be tough. But now we're talking about dealing with a disability on top of what it comes with being a father. How do I change their mindset? What do we do in our community to make them better understand it? I think that's what we're talking about today.
I think we have, we just we gotta man up. And I'm gonna tell you what I mean when I say man up. I don't just mean man up, because I remember it had to be like almost like years ago, like 10 years when he was younger. This young man I'm talking about, and he was younger, and his mom really didn't want him to go nowhere. And I say didn't want to go nowhere because it was a lot of trouble that deal with blah blah blah. And I would say no, he can go with me. And she was like, because she also might have felt some ways, some way that if he does something, how would it look or what have you. And I was like, well, just my personality. I felt I didn't care, but then when we were somewhere, I did recognize how in my mind I thought about it. Well, people would say, "Oh, that's your son." They would ask me, "Was he my son?" I'm saying, "Yeah, yes, no, yes, but he's not my son. I'm just, but it would be this thing that I know it, that feeling that these dads or even mothers may have, because it's this judgment about, well, how did your child get this way? What role did you play for your child to be able to be disabled? And a lot of times when we have high physical disability that you can see, it's much easier for people to accept compared to non-physical sight disabilities. If your child's autistic and they're going to do something off the chain, the people go berserkers because they were like, "Oh, this looks like a regular." And then they say that word right there. "Oh, I thought he was a regular kid." He is a regular kid. See, he's not. He just maybe has a different quirk on. He does something a little bit different, but he's no different from any other kid. in my mind, as a father figure, as a male figure to him, he doesn't do anything. He just talk less, and he communicates with me a completely different way than some other kid would communicate. But then that's me feeling comfortable about him and me having really having a fun time with him. And I think that's the fear we have to get over, is that we can't have those same type of relationships with our disabled child like we would have with our typical child, because that's not true. You can have probably even a more intimate relationship, and when intimacy that you can have with your disabled child than you have with your able-bodied child, able-minded child, because they are a lot more in tune to you, and you have to be a lot more in tune to them, and that's a big factor.
You know,
LJ.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
A quick one to Johnny. Johnny, I teach a class regarding hearts, and one of the things I've noticed whenever I call the hospital, I have moms come by, and I say to moms, "You have any training with the baby?" No. I went to the hospital. I had the baby. I drove back the next couple of days. The min nurse or whatever gives me the baby, and I drive away. Now, let's look at that. We're talking about having a child. Could be a traumatic event or happy event, as I believe Lionel might have said it. But think about this. Here we go. We are starting the journey of having a child, and everyone is happy. We have the baby shower. It's all good. Well, here's the issue. When I call the hospital, I say, "Listen, why are you guys giving these folks babies and they're not doing a class about, let's say CPR, about parenting, about checking the car seat to make sure you got the right car seat?" And she says to me, "Well, she gets an attitude in her feelings." I talk about feelings a lot. And I said to her, "We're doing the same thing over and over again. It's time for a change." As a divorce dad, they gave me a parenting class at court. I'm like, what? This kid is what, 15, and I'm getting a parenting class when this kid is 15 to be a parent? A lot of things need to be changed. We're doing things like we're in the 1960s. It needs to change at the hospital, at the courthouse. There needs to be some more accountability. and until we reach that bridge or cross that bridge, to be honest with you, Johnny, it's just gonna continue. We're just gonna go into these situations and say, "Man, how do I do this?" And as you said it best, Johnny, you have two kind of parents: one who wants to get involved and one who just I guess what? I'm out of here.
I hear that. LJ, I wonder, because I know you've spoken about being, teaching disabled students for the majority, or if not all of your educational career. How was that an area that you decided to get into, and why did it bring you so much enjoyment that you stayed with it that entire time? Because a lot of people, that would be a very difficult or stressful, because it requires so much patience with the children.
A lot of people said that, and actually, I always say I didn't choose the career chose me, because without making a very short story, I was actually in the insurance business, and then I sold my business and I was looking for something to do. I got hired as a substitute for one day, and then they hired me to be the pool sub, and then I became a teacher, and it was just that simple. I had no educational experience. I had taken no educational classes in my lifetime. Wow. Now, I think what made it so gratifying for me was because I could see how hard a lot of my kids worked, and how kids that were quote unquote normal would not work. They had the ability to do something and they could not do it. So it made me appreciate what I was doing a bit more. But kind of pivoting in terms of the parents, what I found was, because all of my students that I ever taught in our cluster, they were all nonverbal. I had all the nonverbal students. So my job, and I would ask the parents this, and they were they just wanted their child to act in a normal social construct, you know, and I would ask the parents, I said, listen, I said, you know, these kids were kindergartners, first graders, second graders, that kind of thing. And I'd say, what do you want me to do for your child? And 99 times out of 100, I would get the answer, can you teach my child how to act? Okay. Now, I knew what they meant by that within that social norm, so that if a child was hungry, they just wouldn't snatch something out of another child's hands or eat off the ground, and just many things that they want to just act impulsively to run away to something that attracted them, that you put some kind of structure in their life so that they would work within norms to the point that they could take them somewhere and not have to worry themselves to death that something was going to happen. And I found that was probably 80% of my job. In terms of teaching the kids the ABCs, 1, 2, 3s, you know, I always said you have to teach them how to act within that social structure first, so that they can then accept the structured teaching that they were going to receive. You know, so you almost I was building foundations. That's all I was really doing. And that's the part that I love, because those kids do understand. They just will do things differently than other kids might do things. That was it.
And when you use the word parent, did you often see the father there as well? Or most of the time the mothers?
Most of the time it was the mothers. But like I said, when I saw the fathers there, the fathers were there all the time. The fathers were there many times more than the mothers, because it was, like I said, a love-hate. Either they were just very, very attached, or they were just not around very much at all. You know, so some fathers, I never saw them ever, you know, during the whole 5 years they were in elementary school, never saw the father, you know, and but some fathers I saw every day, because they would bring their kids to school and drop their kids off, and they're going to be at all the parent-teacher conferences and all that kind of thing. So it was really, really something to see, but especially that interaction that the parents had, and believe me, once you become part of their family. You know, as a teacher, I mean, I still get it, and I've been retired from that for 4 years now, and I still get cards and calls, and you know, and pictures about how their kid is doing. So it's like a family thing.
Yeah, you know, just to kind of follow up with what Lawrence is saying, and what you do see if we're looking for the fathers, and I'll tell you, you do see fathers, and I worked at an early age level, so I worked at like the elementary school level, where I initially came to Broward and was working. Fathers were there because they had the kids. The matter of fact, I worked in the area where a lot of well-off fathers had, you know, they had money and they had status, but you know what happened? Those relationships didn't last. The relationship fell apart a lot of times due to the disability of the child. And the mothers could, you know, the fathers, and I hate to say this, but some of those fathers could care less about those kids. Wow. They actually moved on to a brand new life and a brand new family with other kids. You know, and that's something that troublesome. You know, that's something that was very troublesome to me to find that the dad was there once they was able to break out, things didn't happen. Then you didn't see the dad no more. Now the mom is just like, she was a stay-at-home mom. They was getting a divorce, so she was probably getting the settlement, this and that. But the dad was basically just take all this and be gone with it. You know, and I'm gonna go start another life. And that's something that many of us, and I'm gonna say this, you're gonna have to deal with that legacy. I think who was saying, you was describing it, Johnny, that game. I don't want to say it's Game of Thrones you're talking about, but that Game of Thrones type of thing where you discount the children that are important for the ones that you want to be important. only to find out the ones who are not, who are disabled, who are not the ones you put on the pedestal, really be the ones you really give you the legacy that you want, but you don't have that connection.
Ron, I want to comment real quick on that one. You know, as we are child advocates here, I was watching a case with a popular lawyer in South Florida, and he has 3 children, and I believe 2 of his kids are practicing in his name. But when I did my research and I looked at them and looked at this, he has 3 children. He has one that is maybe maybe mentally ill or has some issues, and the child killed the father and killed himself. Look at that legacy. Here's a guy who's well known in the community, who has done well with 2 of the kids, and now the child that is not following or maybe not his legacy takes his own life and takes his father's life. So I like how you mentioned that, and I hope someone is listening out here. You gotta love that child, the one that may not be on a flag, because remember, that child could love you, and you could put that child in a corner or not on the limelight. But we're talking about what? Maybe this child is like 28, 30, and at the end of the day, he took his father's life and he took his life. And most people say, oh, you know, he's evil, you know, he took dad's life, but nobody talked about his life. So I'm saying to fathers, if you are out there and you're listening to this program, and you know, let's keep it real. We want to look good. You know, some folks profile, some folks don't want to talk about these issues. Get help. We are here. Get help. We will help you with your child that is maybe disabled, or you don't even understand. There are people out here who can help you with your child. So please, don't put your child in a box, in a corner. Go start another family, because I'm telling you, 20 years later, that child is going to come back for you. Keep that in mind.
And I hope come back, and we're gonna say come back in a positive way.
Yes.
Because the way you just described it would make me want. I'm gonna have to do something and see, so I ain't gotta worry about coming back later on.
The reason I say that is let's say this. Let's say you're a single dad, or you're an active father. That child is looking up to you, and mind you, there are many different circumstances and situations. But that child is going to always talk about his father and his mom too. So I don't say that in a negative way. I'm just saying that don't think about the beginning, think about the end sometimes.
Gentlemen, it's just very interesting hearing all of you all's comments. And I'd like to say to Brother Lawrence that you did the Lord's work with those many years of teaching those kids. My youngest son, Carter, is autistic. He's on the spectrum. He's high functioning, and it's kind of interesting when I think about when I started dating Thelma. She told me all about Carter, all about his disabilities, but Carter was such a sweet-hearted kid, even with his autism, that the heart of this kid was, I'm not sure how to say it. It kind of overtook the disability, if you will. I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, but that made it easy for me to be involved in his life because his heart was so pure and genuine, and he just happens to be, autistic. And the reason why, I say to Brother Lawrence, he's doing the Lord's work, is because we had the most difficult time with Carter when he was in elementary school. And the teachers just did not have the I don't know, the wherewithal, the patience, I guess whatever it took. It was just very difficult for us to be able to integrate Carter in public school because the teachers just did not know how to handle some of his autistic ways. Now I know every a kid is different. You know, they each have their own identity and their own style and mannerisms, but there are certain traits that seem to uh, be, I guess, stereotypical, I guess, between us autistic kids, and they just had the most difficult time. And what's interesting, when the pandemic happened and he was basically forced to do school online, he he just flourished
Really?
because of his social miscues. It was very difficult for him at school. He was bullied a lot. The teachers had a hard time understanding him, and because of that, he was very frustrated and very aggravated and prone to outbursts as a result of not being heard or seen in the way that he needed to be seen in order to thrive. Um, but now that he's doing online school since the pandemic, he's doing Florida online school because I guess he doesn't have the pressure of trying to be um, socially correct, if you will, or socially acceptable. He's thriving. I guess my only concern is that as he gets older, he is going to need practice on how to read the social cues to be able to manage his behavior in group settings. Um, but you know, he's just a really cool kid, and just hearing you guys identify with as behavioralists, identifying with the traits of these kids who may have mental disabilities that you can't see. Um, Man, you guys are just doing the Lord's work. And so I commend you. I want to encourage you guys to continue that. Brother Lawrence, I'm sure you probably could be a consultant somewhere. I'm just encouraging you guys to keep it up, and my personal thanks to you guys.
Thank you,
You know,
brother Eddie. I
thank
got a
you.
question. One question, Eddie. When you use the term high functioning, because I've heard that, and I don't want to misunderstand what that means. What does that mean, high functioning autism versus low functioning?
Okay, high functioning meaning Carter is able to communicate, he's able to express himself, he's able to learn, he's able to express his emotions. I've seen very few low functioning autistic children, but the low functioning ones are nonverbal. They have no ability to verbally communicate, and it's just I'm trying to get an understanding of where that particular child is a lot more difficult in a lower functioning child versus a high functioning child.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, Johnny, just to give you an example, like especially for the autistic students, they're on the spectrum. So you have, and the spectrum has four corners to it, kind of. And so very high functioning means that their biggest deficit is not understanding social cues. And most of those people would be our savants that would, and a part of them being a savant becomes a part of the disability also, because they don't have the control to say, when you say, hey, what's your name? Well, I remember I had a little brother, right? From Big Brothers, Big Sisters. And he had to tell everybody that we weren't real brothers. The people knew me, the regular people knew, but when I would say, oh, this is my little brother, so-and-so, he would say, oh yeah, but we're not real brothers. And he had to make sure, it was very important to let them know that they don't make a mistake, that we're not real brothers. And that was a little small cue that was quirky that people didn't understand. But I think even to go back to Ed's point, that there are a lot of people who want to put people with disabilities into boxes, and they're not. People with disabilities are just like everybody else. They don't need to be in a box. You just need to identify what is the different way that you involve yourself with them, and you utilize that. That's the whole point of accommodation, modification. But there's more of it for us, the people without disabilities, that have to do it than them, because a lot of times they learn how to do a lot of accommodations. We still, as you all as, let me say this the correct way, you all as able-bodied with non-disability persons have a difficulty with it, because you believe that the way it is done as a non-disabled person is the right way.
Gotcha.
Whereas for people with disabilities, we have to modify how we do things, the way we do them, and it may not make sense to you. So just imagine having a parent who becomes frustrated with their child because they're thinking this is the way you should do this, but the child is only modifying and accommodating what they know how to do, how they know how to do it. And a lot of times, what the biggest thing that we see is behavior. The behavior is a scapegoat for everything for what a child may not be. Lawrence, would you second my opinion? Would you second
absolutely.
that?
Absolutely.
Behavior is if it wasn't for behavior, a lot of times we wouldn't even know that kids are having a difficulty.
Got it.
That's why they actually, I tell people all the time, I used to tell my parents all the time, I said, especially when I talk to parents of children that are high functioning, I said, most of our leaders in this society, a la the Bill Gates of the world, they're just Asperger's. They got a big disability, huge disability,
Right.
but they are just able to, they're quirky enough to become successful and to become some of the richest people in the world. Like they used to say, always watch that kid in the corner that's not saying anything to anybody, but I watch him because one day he's gonna be your boss.
Yeah.
That's the way it works. A lot of these kids are just very, very intelligent and high functioning. Also, when it usually with what we consider low functioning kids with autism, it's usually a combination. It's not just the autism. It's usually the autism combined with another disability. They may have they might be limited in their capacities to think and figure out, solve issues and that kind of thing. It's not just their behavior. Most of all, they're mentally a lower functioning type of student. And so it's a lot of crosses with a lot of different things that actually makes them low functioning that I found. So
okay.
And you have they have a lot of how do you say it? What am I thinking? They're strong in certain subjects, right? So you have your I'm gonna give a reference point. I don't know if you guys remember the movie. I don't know, Rain Man. I know some people on here aren't old enough to know Rain Man. Tom Cruise, Rain Man with Dustin Hoffman. Yeah. He was autistic, but he was high functioning, and he also had a complexity for counting cards and everything like that. So he had high math capacity. Something that's more on the range of the people today would be the Big Bang Theory, right? The TV show Big Bang Theory, Sheldon Cooper.
Correct. Yeah.
He would be considered autistic. He can't take social cues. He doesn't understand, but he's very smart. He's very high functioning. It's just that he's on that spectrum. He's on the higher end of the spectrum. His social cues are off, and his interactions and the way he behaves is off compared to what we would consider normal behavior.
Got it.
So
I invented this movie called The Accountant. I don't know if y'all seen that one with what's his name? The dude that's married to J-Lo.
Affleck. Is it Affleck?
Yeah, Ben Affleck. Yeah. See, I remember him as a dude that married to J-Lo. I remember the bad name. But yeah, he was in that movie, and that's what that was, because he was so good with numbers. As you said, he made a whole lot of money his social cues are way, way off. So I get that. Like, but you were gonna say something.
Yeah, I guess I was sitting here listening and just to really dig into this topic, I think we discover another disability, and that's the disability of particularly fathers disconnected from their disabled children.
Right.
And so, what type of disability is that? And when you think about all different dysfunctions in the DSM, you can't never. They never diagnose. And this is the thing, because the privilege. Remember, I told you we have male privilege, we have white privilege, we have rich privilege, and so it's very rare when you're at a particular status. Status very rarely get diagnosed. And so when you have something going on dysfunctional, like a parent from a child, that dysfunction never goes, or rarely goes, gets diagnosed, or often goes undiagnosed. And so the fact that we have that particular, and we're talking about this, and I'm saying, and we're going into all the spectrums that we're fed, and all the things that they already labeled, right? When we talk about autism and stuff like that. But we got into all those conversations instinctively. We got in all those conversations, I think, right? To take away from our own dysfunction and not really answering, why do we disconnect from our disabled children?
Whatever, Lightburn, whatever, man.
And so, and I mean, and I can be honest with you, and I do believe disabilities are instinctive just as well as abilities are instinctive, because the same thing you may call a disability, disabilities actually birth abilities, like people's sign language. I would really know how that came about, but it's a very, you understand what I'm saying? The fact that somebody stayed around long enough, or a parent or somebody who cares, or a caregiver stayed around long enough to create an effective communication that will go down in history. And then like the blind, the people who walk and things like that. And then and so I think at the end of the day, I think what makes us disabled as normal people is we don't have the ability to educate other senses. And that's what is the biggest disability of all, which is back to what I think Lawrence alluded to. Because again, if you're comfortable, and we're privileged, because normal people are privileged, and that's another privilege. Just like white privilege, male privilege, now you have normal privilege, because normal privilege says I don't have to heighten or educate none of my other senses. Where if you lost that sense, you would have to educate that on a level, or if you're up to it, or die. But that's the situation where I think there's so much education to learn from disabled people, but again, we're not open for it, because again, we don't have to actually use it. You understand? And I think that's another reason why we disconnect as well, because we may not be up for the task of being educated and educating our other senses.
Good point there, Brother Lightburn, as usual. Made me feel bad about not staying on topic and going off into the spectrum thing, but I'm messing with you.
That's still in topic, Johnny. It's still in topic.
Rod, come
on, don't beat yourself up, brother. He not here to beat you up. He here to enlighten you, brother. You don't have to you don't lay down on the sword, okay?
That I do know. Listen, man, I just
watching too much Game of Thrones, brother. Watching too much Game of Thrones. Those people about beating each other up, brother. You need to watch some love shows.
I hear that. Now, I definitely agree with what Lightburn was saying. I mean, we definitely, as far as men continuing to be better fathers and understanding how do we encourage our brothers and sisters, especially our males, our brothers, who are fathers of children with disabilities. How do we get them to be willing to be more involved and be present? Because the fact is, we do see the numbers. Oftentimes, men do walk away and go and start new families because, like I said earlier, they feel that this is not the legacy they wanted to leave. And they're trying to get, quote unquote, a normal child. So they go and try it with someone else because it ain't their fault that the child came out disabled. Maybe it's the mama. She got disabled genes in her. So let me go try it with another.
I hate to let you know this, Johnny. I hate to let you know.
Break the science to me.
Yeah, I just want you to know they get a rude awakening for a lot of them, Doc.
All right.
When they find out because the one they already had, this baby was young. First off, the typical guy who liked that he already had a set of kids, grown kids.
Yeah.
They got him another younger tenderoni to start this new family with. But what he forgot is that his sperm cells were more likely disabled or dysfunctional.
Okay.
Hold on.
This is the scientific fact, and Rohan, you know this.
I'm gonna respond.
And so when he went to go be involved with this young woman, it was his sperm cells, his sperm that caused the dysfunction for the child. And so then well, you can say allegedly. The science has begun to they've researched the science. That was one of the big things. They researched that science, and it found that it came from the fathers a lot of times.
Gotcha.
And here you are, you gave this woman a defective sperm, and you're gonna leave her high and dry with your defective sperm. That's not appropriate.
I beg to differ. I beg to differ there.
Yeah.
You can beg to differ.
Like Gaspar said, that was a lawyer coming on Gaspar. He said allegedly.
Yeah, well, you can do all that. Go. Hey,
I'm gonna say Ron,
Google and look it up, my brother.
Ron, I've done many research, just like you said, regarding the amount of the sperm and scenarios. And some research also shows that if the father is in good health, and let me make that clear, in good health, he's still able to produce how could I put it, a sperm that is worthy, so to speak.
What you saying different? Rohan, what you saying different than what I said?
No,
I didn't say the man sperm was bad. I'm saying that there are bad sperm that men have. That's all I'm saying, brother.
So I'll say there's good sperm that some men have. I'll respond there. I'll take a second.
What happened is y'all have the same statistics. You're just coming at it at different angles.
That's all.
Thank you, Gene.
That's all. One thing that Lightburn did say that I have lived is the part about when you read disabilities, birth ability. Because when my grandmother, who raised me for the majority of my life, she slowly but surely became blind when I became my early teen. And although she couldn't see anymore, her hearing gravitated to that level of hummingbird, whatever, where she could hear the hummingbird waves type of situation. And we used to be like, yo, how can you, we would be in the back room of this house and we all talking like this tremendous amount of white noise, as you would say. Everybody's chattering or whatever. And she would say, someone's at the gate. And we're like, how you know somebody at the gate? We all back here talking. Ain't nobody at the gate. Grab about 5 seconds later, you hear a knock at the door. And everybody's like, okay, this is crazy. But as Lightburn said, her blindness led to the birth of her extraordinary hearing. And her ability to feel also got to that next level because she continued to cook on a gas stove by feeling the level of the flames. And we would be looking at her and be like, "Oh, you burning your hand?" And she's like, "No, I'm okay." And she still cooked. So, Lightburn was saying that everything. I saw her as the example. The part about coming back to the beginning, however, about us accepting and realizing where we are as absent fathers when it comes to our children with disabilities. I think we just have to be present. I just wanted to say that because Lightburn gave me that memory of my grandma when he said that. So with this part about being present and us being able to encourage our brothers to be more present by us maybe taking a more active role like men like Lawrence has done, that in us doing that part, if we do come across that situation, that they in turn would see us and be willing to be an example as well. Because sometimes, like I said, the only way you know how to do something is if you see someone doing it. And if in our community, we have often ran away and left those children just with the mom, how do those men who have them, those boys, those men that do have them, know how to raise one if they've never seen it? And that's the point that I'm making here tonight. We got to just do our part in those situations where we can step in, as Ron has so eloquently done in his situation, continue to be the example that we're trying to make the world. I hope that makes sense.
No, in defense of the men, just real quick, in defense of the men, I've seen a couple of situations where the mom walked away from the kids, and 5 or 6 kids, and in both of those cases, the kids actually did better.
Got it.
All of a sudden, because, and I think what it was a lot of times when the lady's around, you're allowing her to do certain things, to feed the kids, to clothe the kids, to do those kind of things for the kids. Once they removed themselves from that situation, then the father took the responsibility upon himself to do those things. And those kids actually did so much better with her gone.
Do you think her negative, maybe her spirit was at home with them, and with her no longer, with that negativity no longer being there, do you think that may have played a role as well? Not just his role.
I don't think it's a negativity. I think it's just a oftentimes fathers, right? We're more independent. We want to drive more independence within the kids. Right. Where you have mothers who want to do more for the kids and stifle the independence. You'll find that even as the kids get older, you'll find a lot of times moms still stifle that independence of their adult child, where the fathers are like, let them be. They learn what they can learn. They just have to make their own mistakes.
Gotcha.
Others are like, no, I don't want him to make these mistakes. I want to in a coddling sense. And so when you have kids with disability, you find that a lot of moms then take it to an extra extreme, right? Because say it again.
They want to protect the child from injury or from those negative statements, the bullying situation like Eddie talked about that his son had to go through. Gotcha.
Correct. Where the fathers are like, no, I'm gonna allow you to dress yourself. The mom's gonna be like, no, let me just help you, and it'll be a whole lot easier. And you'll find that there are a lot of kids who have these disabilities who want to be independent. They want to show that they can do and they can reach certain levels. And I believe in the case where when the fathers are there and active, that is able to be done because, like I said, fathers more often than not foster the independent spirit of the child.
And if you just need more evidence support of that, you just look at father styles of parenting versus mother style of parenting. But if you really want to say, okay, you're talking about fathers and this, look at male special education teachers versus female education teachers. And you'll find that especially in variant exceptionality classes, the students do highly better than in the female classes because of, I think, the mindset of the male of how the male goes about instruction. And when I say instruction, it's done in a way that how we kind of do things as men. We just do things different than women. It's not bad or good. It's just how we do it. This ultimately turns back into my argument, the importance of both parents in co-parenting, because the kids need both of those models to be well-rounded as individuals, disabled, differently abled, or typical normal child, as you would say. They need it across the board, all the children, no matter what they are. They need they need the dad who say, no, you can get your ass out your bed on your own. I ain't getting you up. And because the mom will come in every morning, pick them up, take them out the bed, want them taking them back. The dad said, no, you're going to do it yourself. And the kid lives up to that expectation.
Correct.
And so later on in life, they're not sitting waiting on somebody to do something for them. They begin to do it themselves.
Yeah.
So you see these kind of, and then there's nothing wrong with mom coming in and helping baby. Come on, baby, let me get you in the bathtub. There's nothing wrong with that. But a kid needs the diversity, the option of seeing the different experience of doing that themselves to be more well-rounded and more developed in their own development.
A quick one for that. As a divorce dad, I recently had an incident, and this just goes to show what Ron said real quick. My daughter, when she comes to stay with her dad, she got herself ready to go to school. Apparently, the school called and said she was not dressed appropriately to the school code, to the school code. Mm-hmm. So the mom calls me roaring, "How dare you make my child leave the house like that? How dare you?" And she's fuming, and she's behaving. And I let her speak, because we talk about communications. I asked her, "Speak till you're finished, then I will respond." And I said to her, the child, like all of us, has to fall. The child is going to make a decision at some point. You can't be there forever to be there with the child when the child make that decision. What happened when she's 19, 20? She has to fall and learn how to get back up. And that's what happened. She fell, and it was discussed. And the next time she came here, she learned, she wore the clothes that was appropriate. So Ron is right. The mothers, and I get it, we want to be protective. We want to protect our kids. But I'm telling you, we all fall, and we all got to learn. Falling is bad. Staying down is even worse. It's getting back up and keep moving. That's just it, simple.
Falling is part of learning.
So talking about getting up and getting back, we've had a really good conversation, and I definitely welcome anybody to say anything else. But I put there's a couple things in the chat I really want you guys to look at. I'm going to probably also entertain them also tomorrow and this is a plug for tomorrow's meeting. We're going to have it because we're going to have it, but we know not everybody may be able to, or they may be able to, because I just got to notice that school's closed tomorrow. This is closed tomorrow. Everything's closing down, but you know how that works for us in Florida. Everything be closed down. The storm don't come until Friday. So we sitting Wednesday and Thursday with nothing to do. I guess pretending like we're putting up borders and things in our house and getting ready for the storm. Then it rains real hard. Then they try to figure out Monday. Monday they tell you come back to work on Monday, and that's one of the worst the worst days. I don't know how that works out. I don't know how they book that together, because they didn't let you be out of school for 3 or 4 days. But I would say there's a couple things in the chat I want guys to definitely look at, and if possible, please answer the survey that I have there. I'm doing that for a brother who is trying to look into doing these kind of things. Not me. I put it in there, but it's not me doing it, because I got enough of this to do with y'all on this. I don't have no time to do other things like that. But he asked me to survey the fathers that we have in our group, and I told him I'll get a couple surveys from tonight and tomorrow. But I definitely, this has been a good conversation. I hope that has been helpful to mothers and fathers who have disabled children, or even family members who understand the support that their family members need. Because some people take it for granted that raising a disabled child is, something that they just avoid to even acknowledge, and that's a big thing. They almost avoid acknowledging it. And sometimes the people who do it, sometimes seem that they're complaining all the time. Like they're complaining about everything and what's going on. But sometimes it's just because if they're doing it by themselves, because two parents together will give you the same complaint that a single parent give you back. So it's not like, oh, that single parent's bitching and moaning. If you had two parents, they both will tell you the same thing. Just like you see when you have a brand newborn baby. Both parents in the home, they tell me they didn't get no sleep. They both not getting no sleep. So I just want you to, this is not like a single parent type thing that's different. If you have both parents, the same type of wear and tear is on both of you. And so you have to have some empathy for a single mother who's trying to do this and what kind of support you can give. And as a father who may have a mother who is dealing with your child, your seed that is disabled, you have to think about the wear and tear on her and what your child is lacking from you not being there. If your child already allegedly lacking things in their full functioning, what are they missing even more with you not being there, filling in the gaps that they really do need that can be input. So I just say that and send that message. And I'm always sending messages to dads out there who are listening, just because if we don't say it, a lot of times people say nobody didn't ever told you. And so that's my biggest work, all the work I've done in my life have been when you hear people say, oh, no, nobody ever told me. And so every time I get an opportunity, it's probably now becomes a thing where people think I know everything because I'm always trying to tell them something. But it's not. I'm just saying that if I tell you, somebody told you.
I hear that.
If you just listen to it, you don't got to do it, but at least you listen to it and think about it. Later on, you might say, all right, I'm gonna do so. I'm gonna check that out. I might try to do it different. But if nobody ever told you, then you're right. You just say, well, nobody ever told me. That'd be your tool belt that you wear. Nobody
so can I add to that? Because
yeah,
I think it's important. I'm gonna take a page out of Rohan's book, that with our kids who are average in their development, we need to advocate, but more so for our kids with disabilities. And if you're not present and there to advocate for your child, those are the kids that will fall through the cracks the fastest and get stuck there the longest. And it's important that when we look at our kids and we talk about advocating for our kids, it's not just about, advocating to spend time with them, but it's advocating on their education, advocating on just our education on what it is that we have to do with them. So it's in different parts where we're going to advocate, but also you want to advocate for them in the school system, because a lot of times kids with disabilities will get left behind and labeled incorrectly and suffer when it's needless. And so I think that, it's important that we start to put on our advocacy hats when it comes to these kids who are a part of our lives, who are in our lives, whether they're our kids or our sisters' kids, our friends' kids, just being able to sit there and advocate for those kids to make sure that they get as much advantage as everybody else. Like Lightborn was saying, the privilege is not just for the normal privilege, it's for the privileges for everybody.
Ron, you know what? I think, and there's another, I guess, silent kill in the room when it comes to this particular topic, what we don't want to think about, and that's the subculture of who these kids become when they don't have the support system or the advocacy. And I can tell you this emphatically, that who makes up the homeless population in America?
Exactly.
And that's the addicts and the disabled. And so when you don't have a disabled child, don't have a support base, or that support base may have died, then that child, if that culture haven't came together to support that child, like the matriarch or the patriarch tried to teach that particular community and that family, then they make up a huge portion of the population of the homeless. And so I can understand an addict being home. At some point, 50% of the time, they may have bought that on themselves. They had at least 50% of the buy-in of them being homeless. But when it comes to a disabled person being homeless, you understand, then the numbers of them bringing that on themselves shift. And so you have to put a demand, a conscious demand to let everybody know when you pull up to the red light, every homeless person is not an addict.
Right.
You understand? And what portion of that person may have been disabled, you understand? Or he came up disabled level and he was just thrown on the streets. A great example of that is the hospitals. They can keep you for about 1, 2, 3 days, maybe a week. And then they put you straight, and they literally drop you on the bus bench if you don't have no support base. Particularly the disabled people and the people with the voiceless people. If you don't believe me, I've seen it time after time. Disabled people sit on the bus stop with only a hospital gown.
Yep.
I've seen it. And so I think we have to give real narrative, to this particular topic, that if we don't pay more attention to advocate even stronger for disabled children and disabled people in general, then that next homeless person can be your disabled child, no matter how high functioning they may be.
Right.
Once your support is gone, where do that leave them tomorrow if we don't solidify the support for our disabled population?
And Lionel, just to say where the number 2 place is, that's for the for the able-bodied disabled people. They end up in the second largest place, is the prison institution complex. When you go there, you don't learn that until you are maybe a teacher in the prison, and you go there and you realize that you see grown men, 50, 60 years old, who literally, you realize that they have, for sure, they're not illiterate, they are disabled because they can't even, they can speak, but processing, a lot of their processing is out. And these things, you say to myself, is how did they even end up in prison? What was it? What did that lawyer, where did the fist that the lawyer said this person couldn't even process what he was even doing? But again, that's another story for another topic for another time. But I think Lionel said it first. We first see them on the streets, and when we don't see them on the streets, the next place we don't see them are in the prisons. The 2 places, homeless and the prison, is where we find a large majority of our disabled persons. And we like to say, and I think just to add to that what you said, we think that the people on drugs and say, oh, they took the drugs because they want to, or they alcohol because they want to. Imagine having a disability that you don't know and how to deal with.
I hear that.
You're gonna do something to try to appease yourself, and then that starts this whole roll down the rabbit hole snowball and what you see. But this is for us to think about, because we can stop it as fathers. Just go over the house, go over that, go tell them, listen, send the kid outside in the wheelchair. I'll take them. Take them, listen, I just take them for a walk around the neighborhood, because the idea that someone like their father is with them in public and people see them with you as their father is all they really need to build their esteem.
That's it. Whew. Self-esteem right there, and it changes. And our self-esteem will continue to grow, because we're going to wrap this up in 2 minutes with Ron, and our self-esteem will continue.
So again, like, share, subscribe. We are here every Tuesday. We had a next week we are talking about are you a just man? Are you just a man is the topic, I believe. A just man. And then I'm only saying that because the week after that, October 11th, put that on your calendar. We will be having a special guest here to talk about HIV and AIDS. Our topic is everything fathers should know about HIV and AIDS. And I know that may say, hey, that seems strange. Why would we want to know that? Well, you do want to know it, because if you are a father, that means that you have had the tendency at some point to come in contact with HIV and AIDS. I'm just keeping it real with you. I mean, if you don't know that, then definitely you need to come on October 11th so you can get this knowledge. We're going to have a special guest that will be on, and he's going to join the conversation with us. We're going to ask him a whole bunch of questions. We're going to let him tell us what he do, how he does his work, and what happens, what goes on, so we can be more informed as fathers. So we have the next 2 weeks already planned out. Hope to see you. Again, we here tomorrow night. Remember, it'll be raining, so you really ain't got nowhere to go. So I'm pretty sure we're going to have a large audience tomorrow, as long as you still got internet. And the wind won't be blowing yet, so it won't be you'll be raining a lot. For our people who don't stay in Florida, you definitely still come on and get on here, and we'll get together tomorrow. We're going to be talking about how to getting involved, because this is what we were talking about today. Our 24/7 Dad topic tomorrow is getting involved, following up on this topic. about the disconnect that we have as fathers to a disabled child. Again, I want to thank everybody. Thank you guys. So we are out of here on time. And I know people got to go start going outside. Some of y'all can go outside right now. Put the sheds up and put the bring all your plants in and tie up your cars. And I got you. But we hopefully will see you tomorrow night. If not, everyone be safe. And we'll make it through this storm. And with the blessings of the Most High, for everybody to be safe and their family safe. And we'll see you all again here next week. All right. So Father, you repeat after me. I am.
I am.
I am.
I say I am.
I am.
I am a man of honor.
I am a man of honor.
I am.
I am.
I am.
I am.
I am a man of courage.
I am a man of courage.
I say I am.
I am.
I am.
I am.
I am a man of respect.
I am a man of respect.
I say that I am.
I am.
I say that you are.
You are.
I say that we are.
We are.
Championship Father.
Championship Father.
Yes, sir.
That's right.
LJ still got the best pose.
Feel like TD Jakes right now, passing the torch. Feel like TD Jakes right now, passing the torch down.
Y'all so
Hey, man, it's so many topics, but guys, thanks everybody for joining us, and we really had. I hope it was helpful to you, fathers. If you want, just look down in the bio, in the credits. It'll tell you how to get on tomorrow's Zoom call. Join us, and we talk about getting involved. All right. That being said, I want to thank you. God bless you. Good night, everyone.
All right, my brother.
All right,
Have a
brother.
good night, fathers.
Take care. Have a great.
Bye.